on cloud. All right, that's good. All right, so far we talked about STLC, and not just me, but also Shantabai covered STLC, right? The reason why we have to bring up STLC when we talk about automation is just to guide you guys on what really is something that we are going to automate. Let me just make sure I'm recording the right screen. We have two screens here. All right, can you guys see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Okay, that's good. All right, so this should be good. So first of all, SDLC. Who wants to tell me all the steps of SDLC, or at least one by one? So let's list them down first, and then we go into our lessons. Go ahead. Requirement. What? What do you do with the requirement?
You have to gather the information for the product owner wants, all the necessary tools.
Wait. So what do you? So first phase of SDLC is requirement. What requirement do you do? Requirement assessment? Do you do requirement study? What do you do?
Analysis.
Requirement analysis.
Analysis and studies, pretty much same, right? So okay, I'll put the easy word here. Okay. Number 2, who wants to?
Test planning.
Test planning, okay. Number 3.
Test case development.
Test case. Okay, so before test case, anything else?
Scenario.
Test scenario.
Right? Test scenarios. And then?
Environment setup.
That is not part of the, obviously,
Test
environment will
development.
be like part of execution, right? Before we execute.
Is it test environment setup? Wait, before that, right?
That will be part of the, like, it logically it should be before you execute, right? Because
Test execution.
yeah. So how would you execute if you don't have? You have the scenario, that
Test case.
cases, right? Okay, so you need the cases. How would you execute tests if you don't have the test cases, right? Then you execute. Execution is going to be part of the environment building as well, right? We're not going to put it into 2 different categories.
Okay.
Otherwise, you're going to have a lot of steps, right? Number 6 is logging and tracking bug, right? And then we have bug lifecycle and all that stuff. So now, if this is your STLC, right? If this is your STLC and somebody, let's say at work, ask you, tell me in details, what do you do when you get a requirement, right? Because this is a core part of your job, right? And if you cannot explain, hey, so I first, when I get a requirement, I study it, I make sure that I know all about the feature functionality of that user story. And after that, I do my planning to make sure that I can go ahead and start writing my scenarios, test cases, and then I execute them. Once the execution takes place, I find bugs, and then I will assign that bug to a specific developer. And then when it fixes, then I will do retesting, and then pretty much that's a cycle right there. So if you cannot explain this portion, that means, like, if you imagine, like, you're saying, hey, I've been working for a long time as a QA, and somebody says, oh yeah, sure, that's great. Can you tell me exactly what you do? What is your process? What process do you follow, right? And then you're not able to explain this, then, you know, you are immediately telling them, hey, I don't know anything, right? Now this is also a engineering process, right? Because, you know, you're following step by step, and this process includes many other tiny small processes. For example, scenario can have, after the scenario, there could be scenario review. There could be QA lead who wants to review your scenario to make sure that you did the right thing and you have the proper test coverage. But anyway, so today's class is automation. So let's talk about that. We already get through this last several classes. So where do you think the automation kicks in? Where do you think automation kicks in here? This is your STLC. Where do you do automation here? Which, you can give me a number.
Number 4.
Number three test scenario.
Number 3 test scenario, and somebody says number 4. All right, both of you guys are right. Okay, and the reason I will say both of you guys are right is because in a real work environment, right, if you have a test scenario, then you can just simply automate that directly, right? So you don't have to write a test case for it, right? So once you have your test scenario, then instead of you choose some test cases to be manually tested, and we call them test cases, and then you do some test cases with automation, we call them test script. Okay, so this is where you have to choose between how many test cases you will be doing manual and how many test cases you will be doing automation. So let's say you have, for one user story, you are able to do 20 test cases, right? 20 scenarios. Out of 20 scenarios, you decided, let's say 5 to be manually tested and 15 to be automated, right? Does this make sense? Okay, so, and what is the criteria? Like, how do you choose what to be automated and how do you choose what not to be automated? And that's what we're going to talk about as well. But first, what is automation? Who can tell me what is automation here? Let's talk about what is manual testing, right? So let's say we're testing Google. Okay, so we're in Google and I am writing to see if it gives me the right result for the right item that I'm looking for. So for example, if
is it like looking for defects or something like that?
no, looking for defect is, you know, it's there, right? It's a reason why we do the testing, right? Whether it's manual testing or whether it's automation testing, that is one of the reason why we pretty much do the testing. But why do we do? Okay, so let's see where we are. Why do we do automation? It's pretty much has better reasons, not just for finding defects, because you can find a defect without having automation.
Is it for basically if you contest it?
So Rabiel, I'll basically ask you to probably change your Wi-Fi or something. Your voice is pretty much breaking, so nobody can hear you. Whoever else want to answer? Yeah, totally is breaking. So we can't really hear you, so we can't answer the questions you may have. But okay, so you guys, the question was, why do we do automation? In order for you to know why do we do automation, let's do manual, right? First of all, okay, let's say in Google, my test case is to go into Google and search for a laptop and see if I get the right result. That's a test case, right? This is how I would do manual testing. I go to the Google and I would look for laptop, okay, and search. And now, as a human being, I'm going to look and say, well, okay, this is giving me a laptop. These results also includes laptop right here, laptop. So I can make a judgment here and I can say, okay, test pass, right? My test just passed. And this is a very simple thing. So for just an example, right? So this is what I just did is manual testing. Now, if my process requires for me to take a screenshot, I would take a screenshot and everything from here, and I would put it in the result and I would say, hey, the testing is done. Sometime we would take a screenshot of the entire process and then create a document, a PDF file, and then we would attach that to the release sign off. So we as a QA, we also do sign off, right? We say, okay, everything is good. But then some managers, they don't want to take your word for it. They want to see the work, right? So when you take screenshots and you have your test case, and each of your test case came with the screenshot and execution result where it shows pass or fail, and then you attach that to your sign off, then pretty much your managers have nothing else to complain about. He will look at it, he will say, okay, everything else passes. I can also clearly see the results and screenshots. I'll go ahead and sign off too, because as a QA lead, you're going to be writing that email to your manager, and then your manager is going to look into that result, and then is going to go for a release, right? So, or sometime if you're a senior QA, you would be able to do that. Sometime if is your QA lead instructs you saying, listen, everybody, when you do your test case or when you execute your test case, make sure you take the screenshots and put it separately, because we need to be able to send this over. So that way we can go for release, right? So then everybody else will do the same. And then QA lead is going to just compile all of it, right? Put everything together and create a single email for the managers to look at. Okay. Now, if this was a manual test case, right? Whatever we just did, right? Just think about what automation is. Automation is basically visiting the Google. It'll be automatic. It'll automatically Google. It'll automatically type laptop. After typing that, it'll automatically check something here. Like, for example, the first result, it will say, okay, if the first result has laptop, then we're good to go, right? That means it passes. If it doesn't see laptop, it'll fail it. So we, as a automation engineers, we can actually make that determination where to look. We can say, look right onto the first table, or look into the first result, or even look into, for example, people also ask this question right here. So as a automation engineer, we have a lot of freedom. We can actually tell our code to look for a specific area. And today, by the end of the class, you guys will see how automation works by using Selenium IDE. Okay, so Selenium IDE is a light version of the Selenium WebDriver, which is the ultimate tool that we will learn at some point, right? Or possibly the next class, but let's see how far we can go with Selenium IDE. So depending on how well you guys do with Selenium IDE, we're going to move forward with more with Selenium and Selenium and Selenium. Java, you're going to learn also from me on the fly, meaning when we write Selenium automated tests, I will also explain why I am writing this new class, what is inheritance, and how do we pretty much utilize inheritance, what are the objects, class, and interface. Right, so these are a few things. Anything that I will be touching on, I will explain. But if you already did Code Academy, this will definitely help you moving forward. Otherwise, you're going to be lost. You're going to have a lot of questions. All right. So why test automation? Test automation is basically to increase effectiveness, right? To have a test coverage, right? So that means we want to make sure that we're testing all aspect of a functionality. We are also talking about execution speed, right? So test automation is all about speed, effectiveness, and also be able to do it timely manner and faster than human being without introducing a human error, right? So imagine like you are testing every day yourself, right? There will be times where you say, okay, you know what? I've been searching with laptops the entire year, every day, and it's always showing up. So it's good, right? It's good. Maybe you're not going to do it one day, or maybe you're upset that day and you said, you know what? Everything passes, and you just come here. Okay, fine. Everything passes, whatever. And you tell your boss. So that is pretty much a human error, right? And now, if you ask the machine to do the same thing, the machine do not have a feeling, right? So you ask the machine to test twice, or you ask the machine to do 3 times a day, and it will do it for you. It will do it for you without complaining. And more importantly, why automation is needed is because of the speed, execution speed. Let's say in Google, right? For example, again, this search feature or functionality, it's something that you're testing. You cannot simply just say, I search for a laptop and it shows laptop and it's good to go, right? You have to have some sort of numbers. Like, for example, you can say I searched 1 million, for example, 1 million words. Out of 1 million words, 99% of the time, it gave me the right result. That is a proper testing for this specific search because of the way it is, because how this, how Google works, right? So now 1 million search query, if you do it yourself, right? Or let's say you got 100 QA engineers, right? And they're doing this 1 million. Everybody's taking maybe 10,000 or maybe like, I don't know, 100,000 per person. And they're trying to do all of that. It will still take months. And top of that, they will probably miss out some things, right? Because you're doing so much, you're doing repeated tasks, you will forget something, you will miss something.
Oh,
And if you do it with automation, it may take, you can actually write automated tasks that will take maybe a day or even less, right? With 1 million tests, 1 million search query. It will take milliseconds per word, right? So even millisecond will add up to a day because it's a lot of words that you're searching with. Okay, so in modern days, when we are following Agile Scrum, right? So we have, let me just go into this.
Malachi.
Okay, so when we are following the Agile Scrum, so how many people would know what Agile Scrum is before we go into that?
That's one of the
All of-
methodology.
Right, so that is one of the methodology of building a software, right? So for SDLC methodology. So let me give you an idea why automation is needed, right? So you got Agile Scrum. Agile Scrum has what? They have sprint, right? A sprint is what? A sprint is a duration. It's a time duration that takes from beginning to end of the entire SDLC. So it's a tiny miniature version of SDLC within, right? So we do everything ready, ship, state, product, part of the application. So if it's, let's say your company or your team agrees to 2 weeks duration, in that 2 weeks, they will also want to release, right? So let's say the for SDLC, so they have to do all of these steps in these 2 weeks. For example, number one, requirement. Number two, right? So if they have to do all of these steps and they want to go for a release, which will be ready, ship, state, and customer can use it after that, what do you think they have to do? If they want to release, what is the responsibility of QA? What does QA have to do in this case?
Make sure the product is bug free or defect free.
Right, and so for example, for these 2 weeks, they introduced new code. New code was tested. That is called functional feature testing, right? We only tested the requirement that was given to us. Okay, so number 4, when we follow the entire STLC right here, we only did that functional testing, but we didn't test the previous functionality, right? So maybe the sprint before this, there were code. Who's going to test those functionality, right? So that's why before the release, what we will do, we're going to say we want to test regression. Regression means we basically testing to see whether a new feature or even updating existing feature do not cause additional issues, right? Additional problems. So we're going to do regression testing. So regression testing pretty much contains a suite of testing, meaning it's a group of test cases that we select because it is a high priority and it deals with major part of this application that we're testing, right? Oh, let me try to move this. Oh, there you go. So that's what regression testing is, right? Who doesn't know what regression testing is here? Okay, so if we are doing that, right, regression testing, for example, or even system testing. So you're doing regression testing, and let's say now regression testing, typically manual regression testing will take a week or two. And that's the reality. If you have, let's say 1,000 test cases and you are 4 QA engineer in the team, right? How many days do you think it will take for 4 QA to do regression testing? And remember, you're a human being, so don't overwork, right? So imagine like you have to, like every few minutes you have to write it, you have to execute a test case, see pass or fail. That is overworking. You're not gonna like that. You will definitely quit the job. But if it takes, let's say you're taking it easy and it takes 2 weeks, we just finished 2 weeks sprint, then it's gonna take another 2 weeks to release. That's a month. That's a month of pretty much developers are just doing nothing but waiting for you to release, waiting for you to say, yes, we're good to go, right? So in Agile, right, manual testing pretty much really do not help too much, right? Manual testing can help, but what about the regression testing? How can you say for sure that there is no bug introduced by the existing code or by the new code that developer just finished, right? So when you do the regression test manually, is going to take significant amount of time. And so now in Agile, what's going to happen is when we create our automated regression suite, it
I have
will
a
take.
question. Why we
Yeah.
need to regression testing? Because we test the whole code, but why I need another test for regression testing?
Right. I mean, it's a good question, right? You got, so let's say this is sprint 2. Sprint number 1, they did some code and everything, and you test all of the requirements and it's good to go, right? That means there is no pre-existing code or there is no pre-existing feature. Now sprint number 2, you got new requirement, you tested it, you did all of your SDLC process, and therefore you're done with testing, and that's called feature testing. You just finished the feature testing. But what about the code, or what about the features that was done earlier? You know what I'm saying? Let me give you guys a proper definition of regression testing, right? So that way you guys will know why we do regression. Okay, let me regression testing. Okay. All right. What is regression testing? Based on Wikipedia, it's a rerunning functional, non-functional test to ensure the previous developed and tested software still perform after change. Does that answer your question?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So
That
it
is
is.
it's
So-
used only for the previous software, not current software.
Right. So as I mentioned, right? So on your sprint 2, you got new code, you tested them, right? You got new requirement, you tested them. But then you didn't test the previous features and functionality, right? Which is regression tests will do, right? So we need to test previous, when I said previous software here, by that means is that previously created features and functionality, right? So for example, on Facebook, on your first 2 weeks, let's say Facebook was never built. On your first 2 weeks, you guys built registration process. Somebody can register through Google, somebody can register through, like, let's say Twitter, whatever, right? And on your second week, you guys decided to build the login feature, which is if you're registered already, you can log in. So now you just finished testing of the login, and they said, okay, we're going to go for release. Can you give us an okay? Right now you're saying, no, I have to do the regression testing. So that means you're going to go back and you're going to test the registration to make sure the registration wasn't broken by this new login feature that was created. Okay, so regression testing.
Yeah, is it depends on the update version, like old version versus update version? When the software is updated, then we need to regression testing.
Exactly. So it's basically when you have a existing feature that was modified, right? Or you added a new feature in your application this new feature can have side effects, right? Meaning it may work differently now, and therefore your existing features of the application is not working the way it used to work, right? So you want to make sure that that doesn't happen. So when you do regression testing, you're basically retesting all the test cases that you wrote before. Okay, so that is one of the reasons why you even write test case. Okay, so you're writing test case, you're pretty much creating a document and you're putting it somewhere, right? You don't just write a test case and forget about it. The reason why we need test cases to be written in a detailed manner is because we want to execute them when we need to, right? So on your sprint 1, let's say you created 20 test cases, then you're going to go back and re-execute them as part of the regression. Okay, so regression is nothing but group of test cases that you selected and says, I will make sure that I will test these test cases just to make sure that my application is healthy.
Basically, like after a QA finds error, sends it back to developer, the developer edits it, and then they send it back for testing. And after you test it a second time, you do regression testing to see like if the developer added or fixed some new features. Did it have an effect on the Java they create, on the coding they created that is not working? So basically, you're remaking sure everything's working fine. Like one step hasn't changed because of another step, right?
Right. I'll just correct you on one thing. It's not just code, right? We
Yeah.
don't really, when you look at the code and do the testing, that is called what? That is called white box testing. But to us, it's basically we look at the feature, right? Meaning, if feature, what I mean by feature, I don't know if you guys know what I'm talking about, but let's say you go to Facebook, right? When you're in Facebook and you, let's say, create a new account, this is a sign up feature, right? Meaning a feature is pretty much a function that has its own task. It does something. Okay, so when we say feature, it means what? It's like pretty much it does something by itself, right? So if I say sign up feature, that means sign up has its own thing, which is to get people in to the system, right? So if the feature was created earlier, right, and you wrote the test cases, you have to take some test case and say, wait, this will be part of the regression. These test cases are important one, so I'm going to put it into regression. So you'll create a folder and you'll say, okay, these test cases qualified to be inside of regression suite. Suite means group of a folder, like for example, a group of test cases that you will select, and you will then put them together because you want to execute them as regression when you need to. The reason why we even document, otherwise, part of the testing, you just come in and say, okay, registration works, and that's it. You don't have to know, you don't have to write any documentation. Nobody's asking you to write documentation. The reason why we write documentation, the reason why we write our test cases is because we want to be able to go back one day and re-execute. If you don't write anything, then you don't know exactly what to test. You're going to be saying, okay, I remember we have to test sign up. You know,
Like what
it's,
the expectations were basically, right?
let's say that again.
Basically, you document it to keep it as a reference for next QA or whoever is gonna do it, or if you're gonna redo it, to like go back to see what was the expectations from the thing.
Exactly, because you don't know what's the expectation. Like, let's say a month later, sign up, right?
Yeah.
How would you know what's the real expectation here? You click on sign up and you go into login, let's say login page immediately, but maybe it wasn't supposed to go to login page. Maybe you're supposed to get another window where it's asks you for details to fill out your profile, right? So we don't really know. Like a month later, you don't remember, you will not remember. Then you're going to go back to business analyst and then you're going to bother them, right? That is your job, to document the test cases with clear expectation. So that way, you know for a fact there is a bug. Imagine you didn't know what's the expectation. You would basically go back and you're going to say, maybe this is a bug. I don't know. It's logging me in. It's supposed to take me to the profile, but there is no maybe. You know, you're an engineer. You're going to be in engineering. So we don't have that maybe situation, right? Because either is or isn't. if the requirement doesn't have it, then it's a bug. That's it. Like there is no discussion here. If the requirement has that specific feature mentioned, then it is not a bug, right? So that's the way we work, right? We sometimes have our mind pretty much like a machine, but yes, we do take determination. We do provide recommendation as a QA by having these experiences, like how this feature works. And let's say you work for another company, and now that company is doing the similar feature, then you can suggest and say, hey, look, we should have, let's say, mobile number or email in the same field instead, you know. Or we don't want to have too many fields. Imagine like this was like a bigger page with so many fields that you have to fill out. They will have less sign up. Right here it's going to be easy, like 1 2 3 and put date of birth and gender and you're good to go. So suggestion simply are welcome from QA, but if it's not on the requirement, that is a bug. Okay. All right, so that's what we do, regression testing. Now coming to the main point, right? So if you do manual test cases, that means you have to go and retest all of the previous test cases that you separated it and you put it into a new folder and say these are regression, and you're testing those. That means it's going to take significant amount of time. So imagine you took 300 test cases, okay, and you put them together and you said, okay, you know what, this will be my regression suite. Okay, that will take maybe a week for one person, a little bit more than a week. If it's 3 person, then it will take 2 or 3 days, right? And I'm just making some assumptions here that the test cases are not complex. So with automation, that will be 2 or 3 hours. 2 or 3 hours later, you guys go ahead and release, and you can move on with your life to the next sprint. This was a sprint number. If this was a sprint number 2, then we can now go into sprint number 3, and we already released with knowing that testing was done. We didn't just skip the testing. We didn't compromise on testing. And one of the things as a QA, you should not be compromising on testing, because that is what we do. We are the testing expert, right? We are the subject matter expert on testing. So imagine you suggest, you go and tell your manager, hey, maybe we shouldn't do regression here, right? It's like saying, okay, you don't want to do your job, you know? All right, so that is one of the reason why automation is kind of essential here for Agile Scrum teams, because it's going to take so much time for you to do those retesting to make sure that previous features, previous functionalities of the application is still working as expected. Okay. All right.
So is regression testing before release? Or
yes, before release, of course, before release, right?
Because I was confused because you wrote it on release. That's why.
No. So okay, yeah, you're fair to say that, because okay, I guess I'll put it up. But the thing is that part of the release, I'm saying, like, in order for you to say, hey, QA is saying, okay, let's say QA sign up, for example, you're saying, okay, everything looks good, right? For you to say everything looks good, you're saying everything, that means you already did the regression testing, or
Right.
you conducted regression testing, you have a result, and you attach that to your email and send it to everybody. But that has to be before. Now I hope this is, let me just fix this. We don't want to confuse people. So regression testing has to be done if there is prior features or functionality existing. What? So who doesn't know what is regression testing by now? Now, before regression testing, it could be another test, another type of testing, right? And I'm just going to list out a few things, right? So that way, system testing, or we call software testing, right? This is pretty much saying that I want to execute every test cases that I wrote before. So imagine this is your 20th sprint and you have 19 sprint already finished. In that 19th sprint, you have written, every sprint you've written 20 test cases. 19 sprint later, you have so many test cases, right? Now, system testing is basically saying all the test cases that we have available are system test cases, right? So you want to execute everything. So sometime when we do regression testing, and we have time, we can go for system testing as well. And the only way we can go for system testing if we really have automation that covers 50, 60, or 70% of the test cases already. If the release is highly risky, maybe there are some changes and your manager saying, hey, make sure this time we don't see a bug in the production because this is a high priority, changes, and this touched everything, and we want to make sure that nothing is broken. Then you can suggest system testing, which means all the test cases that you've written so far up to that point, you want to execute them, re-execute them, right? You want to rerun them to make sure that they're still working. So that's why the test cases that you write, so let me go back right here. That's why the test cases that you write, it's so important that you put so much detail, because imagine you're executing and you don't know what to be done next, right? Because you didn't provide enough details. You didn't provide test data and you don't know what to use. And remember, test data also matters, because if you don't have the right test data, you're not going to get the same results. So the test cases writing in details is very essential for every person. But that is pretty much manual test cases. Now, if you had that automated, right, that means you don't have too many test cases to be executed. That is manual. You have more automation. And there are teams where they don't even have manual test cases, right? They don't really have too many manual test cases, but there is few that takes maybe an hour or two. All right, so that's one of the critical reason why automation is very much important, especially Agile Scrum, or especially the other one, which is Agile Kanban approach. So there is another methodology, right? Implementation of Agile has two. One is Scrum, the other one is Kanban. What am I? Okay, so Agile has two implementation. One is Scrum, one is Kanban, right? Now we are still talking about why, and I'm just going to verbally tell you guys the importance of that. So manual test cases, the workflow, all the fields, negative, positive, scenarios. When you want to do the testing, you'll miss, as a human being, you'll miss something. There will be human errors. It will take a long time. It is difficult for, let's say the website you're testing, it supports 50 different languages. Then you cannot execute all the test cases for all 50 different languages, right? You can't manually. So you have to do it with automation. So these are also some other technical reasons. There are some test cases that humanly not possible to test, right? As a human being, you cannot test it. For example, once you log into Facebook, it creates a session token, right? You need to be able to grab that token and you want to do something with it to make sure the token is valid for X amount of time, or even you want to do something else, right? Or you take the token and you plug that into another person's Facebook. You want to see if you can kind of hack into somebody else's account. It's kind of like security testing, and it shouldn't work, right? So these type of testing, as a human being, like just doing it by yourself, it's not going to be possible. You're going to need some sort of automated tool. Or test automation increases the speed of execution. Therefore, you can release early. You don't have to wait the 2 weeks, and which I explained thoroughly here. Then we have increasing of test coverage. So if you have manual test cases, it takes so much time, you're going to be afraid of creating more test cases because it will add more and more time to execute. But if you have automation, then you have room for adding more test cases because it is fast. Manual test case can be boring, right? So trust me, manual test cases can be boring, and I'm telling you because been there. It can be so boring that you just want to switch your job. Like, oh man, all day long I have to go and test this manually, click here and there, check for this, check for this, check for that. It's working. That kind of feeling will introduce human error, right? Which means you're going to miss something because you're not paying attention, right? Now automation doesn't have that type of feeling. It just does it, right? It just pretty much, you tell it, you do it, that's it. There is no maybe in between. Now, what is to be automated, right? What test cases? There is a list of test cases that we automate, right? It's not just simply automate everything. Just because you can eat doesn't mean you're going to eat everything. What will happen if you continue to eat every day, right? And so obviously you're gonna, at some point you're gonna be done, right? Because it's, you have to watch, right? When you finish eating, you're done, right? So you eating 3 times a day, for example, but nobody's stopping you from eating 5 times a day. Does it mean you want to do 5 times a day, right? That's the question. So same thing. One of the biggest, I guess, one of the statements that I usually make in my own interview is that if we have the opportunity to automate everything, should we automate everything? Should we? That's the question, right? And most of the managers, most of the CTO, even the directors that I speak to, they agree with me. They say, no, we shouldn't, right? It's because it will create more maintenance work, right? Which is something that I will talk about in a second. But here is a list of check. Let's think about these are checklists, right? Number 1, we talk about high risk business critical test cases. So you wrote test cases, let's say, and these fall into this category, which is they are very much high risk. If you don't test them, then it will pretty much, let me just make this. Okay, test cases. So that is one, right? And let me know if you guys disagree, agree, and if it makes sense or if it doesn't make sense. So high risk business critical test cases. So that means, let's say you work on Amazon, right? And at the end, everything is done. At the end, you should be able to click on purchase and make your order, right? Everything works, but one of the critical test case was to see the whole flow, adding something to the cart and then be able to order. And you didn't think, oh yeah, if they can edit, then they can also order it, so it's fine. And you didn't test it. Now millions of users, they cannot order for that day. Okay, because why? Because you forgot, or because you thought that it was working. Okay, and you didn't think that was a regression worthy or automation worthy test case. Then what's going to happen? They will lose billions for that day, billions, just because one QA engineer decided to not test that specific critical test case. Okay, so that is one of the reason why our job is such an important job, right? Because imagine like you are so passive, you are so optimistic, right? Where you decide to say, tell your boss, hey, everything is good, it's working, looks good, go ahead and release, and it goes for release. And now next day, nobody can order anything. Amazon lost billions of dollars. What do you think is going to happen? What do you think is going to happen to your team? Forget about you, right? It's going to be vanished in a day. The whole entire team will be gone, right? Because it's not, the whole team will take the blame, right? Because it's not just you. If you are the person who go outside and say, okay, yeah, I'm sorry, it was my fault, I forgot to test that, even then the whole team will be blamed for, like, okay, we don't want to just, they don't want to depend on these companies, they don't want to depend on just one person, so they will probably like get rid of the manager too. But you're going to be pretty much done. But it's not about just firing, right? It's this, you're going to be in a bigger meetings. You're going to be meeting with big guys, sitting down, explaining why you missed that test case, explaining why, right? And sometime it may end up going to a point where you are probably, they will probably try to litigate, like if they missed that much of a money, or if they lost that much of a money because of you, I'm sure the companies will come after you. But don't get scared. I'm just kind of like making some assumptions
here. Can you get a new job again easily?
Yeah, you can, but like you don't want to make this, like, remember.
Yeah.
It's okay you take 5 days. It's okay you take 6 days. It's okay. You tell them I'm not ready. It's okay. You tell them I couldn't finish testing. I have to still do the testing. It's okay to say release cannot happen today because there are several critical test cases that we didn't test. It's okay to say that, but it's not okay to say I finished without finishing testing, because that is the only job you have, right? Which is to test. So you can't really like just simply put it in your mind. If you didn't test it, don't ever say I tested it. Then you'll be fine. Then you'll be fine. But if you are working, for example, GE Aviation, right, and they deal with aviation related, securities related. It's a highly classified projects and stuff, and you slack on that, then obviously you know what's coming to you, right? If something happens, people dies, right? So you will definitely know what's coming to you. You're working on a government project, and because of your situation something happened, then you know what's coming to you. But I don't want to scare you guys, right? Because there is multiple layers, right? So there is going to be like really not a huge room of making this type of mistakes. I'm just giving you the worst possible case, the worst thing that you can do, right? But let's say you work for a financial product, you work for Chase Bank, you made that mistake. Yes, you're going to be fired, nothing is going to happen, but the company has lost millions of dollars because of you. That's it, right? But you'll never be able to work in Chase again. You will be able to work somewhere else, but you can never work in Chase again. That's it. That's the way it's going to be. But if it's in a good scenario, for example, let's say you're working for a company where let's say you're working for a company and where the bug slept through the production, and really within an hour developer fixed it because they noticed it and they said, okay, you know what, let me fix it. They went and fixed that issue. You just have to write a email, or you just have to go into a meeting where you have to explain why that was missed, right? So imagine you're sitting in front of like big bosses, and they're saying, all right, so explain to us why this was missed, because they don't want to grill you. They're not there to grill you. They're just trying to understand why this has happened and how can they prevent in the future. That's what they want to hear. So simply you can take responsibility. You can say, sorry, that was my miss. This test cases was manual, and I thought I did do the testing, and unfortunately I didn't. So what I will do, I will automate it in the future so we don't miss it, right? It's a human error. So then they're gonna say, okay, fine, right? And you'll just take the blame and just say, look, it's on me. I'll take it. I know that this test cases, I thought I tested it. Unfortunately, it was missed. So I will test it. I'll automate that so we never miss again, right? So that was your solution. You always have to provide what can you do to make sure that this never happens again, right? So this type of meeting we call post-mortem, right? The issue has happened in production, and immediately everybody jumped in. The entire team jumped in to fix it. The fixing is done, and now they have time to do post-mortem, which is pretty much sitting down and talking about why that issue happened and how can they prevent that type of issues. All right. What I want to do is that I want to also do some automation today, right? So that's why I'm going to rush to the next things. Again, so what to be automated? We got high risk critical, business flows, test cases that are test case. Oh, goodness. Test cases that are repeated, right? Repeatedly executed. Which test case do you think repeatedly executed? In the meantime, writing this, go ahead.
Especially finding a bug when there is a bug.
No,
It's
you're not.
repeated.
No, that's not the correct answer. Who wants to answer it? We talked about it earlier in this meeting. So if you paid attention, you know what I'm talking about.
Regression testing.
Regression testing is one, right? Because you will make that choice. Like every time a release is happening, boss, I got to do regression testing. You know what? You can just go and like, let's say your manager's name is David. You just go like, hey, David, we have to do the regression testing. Otherwise, I cannot give my consent for a release. And he's gonna be like, oh man, come on, do it. We don't have time. Like, no, I'm sorry. You can, if you want to approve that, you can do it. You're the manager, right? I will definitely go ahead, and if you're okay with it, then I'm okay with it, right? But you know that
The
this is
main
gonna take
question
us
I
a
have
long
is
time.
like, you know how they have the sprints, right? Let's just say you're the one in control of your QA project, right?
Okay.
And you telling them like, hey, I need more time, I need more time, I need more time. And what if you're slowing the sprint down and stuff like that? Do you get what I'm saying? Like, are you totally in control when it's in an STLC environment?
You see, like it depends how credible you are, right? So if you're in your team, you are the owner, you taking ownership, then yes, your voice will be the loudest, right? You're gonna say, listen, I cannot go with the release tomorrow because we don't have enough time. The test cases that I have 100 test cases left to be tested, and it will take the entire day tomorrow, so we can go release the day after. So you guys decide what to do. Then your manager comes and like, hey, listen, we still want to release tomorrow. I have some time, I'll help you with testing. Then you give him 50 test cases, let's say. Okay, here are 50 test cases. I want you to execute, and I want you to send me screenshots. And also the results. I will do the same for the other 50, right? That's one way to go. They usually come and like, even the developer will say, hey, can I help you with some test cases? And then they will definitely say, okay, yeah. And if you say, yeah, sure, help me with test cases, you just give them what are the test cases that you want them to test. And then after that, you can still release on time, right? So yes,
there's no
you do
pressure.
have full control because you don't want to compromise on testing. But don't be difficult, right? Don't be a difficult person. You want to be able to explain why you're going to take such a long time. You want to say, look, you want to lay down the options. Here are the 500 test cases. We executed 300 as a regression. We have 200 left. And at this point, we didn't find any critical bugs. But if you guys want to go for a release, there is a risk. If you make a determination, go ahead and talk to the QA manager and ask him if he's going to be okay with the releasing with these 200 test cases not being executed, right? Because at the end of the day, yes, you can be the bottleneck, but you tell them the choice. If you want to take responsibility and you want to go for it, yeah, that's fine. I tested, I will still provide my result for the 300 I tested already. All right. Nobody wants to take responsibility. They'll say, okay, fine. How long is it going to take to finish? Generally, that's the answer, right? They will say, okay, how long it will take. They will never say skip that. They will never say skip and not do the testing, because testing is all you do, right? All right, so that the other one is tedious and difficult, right? Okay, this tool is giving me a hard time today. Okay. So just know the thing here, right? Tedious and difficult. And the last one that I would think is pretty much test cases, which are time consuming, right? Okay, so these are some. So this is an interview question. Any QA engineer has ever did automation testing, they will ask this question in an interview. What do you consider to be automated? What is your criteria? Well, it's high risk, high business critical test cases that are repeatedly executed, test cases that are very tedious or difficult, test cases which are time consuming. Like, I think this is a pretty good list. There are other reasons. And remember, every team is different. They can have more to say they want to automate. They can say, look, I want to automate all the sign up pages related test cases. And it's because that is very relevant to the product they're working on, right? So anything can change depending on the team that you're working with.
What was the example for number 3 and 4? The tedious difficulty and the
Sure. So tedious and difficult, right? So for example, let's say when you are testing Google, and that is something that we talked about earlier, you got to do 1 million. Do you think it's difficult? 1 million? Do you think it's not a difficult test cases? 1 million search queries, like right here.
Yeah.
So that is pretty difficult, right? Is it tedious? I think so, right? It's because you're gonna have to, okay, so you search with a keyword regression, then you have to find another keyword. Okay, next keyword is iPhone, and then the next keyword, and then the next keyword, and the next, you know what I'm saying? So it'll get to you very soon, right? Time consuming, yes, that is also a good example of a time consuming, because you're doing 1 million keywords testing,
makes
right? So
sense,
that pretty much covered both, but you can probably come up with more ways. But when you see that, okay, yeah, this test case, if I want to execute, is crazy. Like, for example, let's say you have to sign up. Like, for example, let's say Facebook says, we want to make sure that every country, people from every country, they can sign up and they can log in. That is a test case, right? So now you have to configure your computer in a way that you can simulate different countries. You have to change your IP first. You have to change your VPN for each country. That's the first prerequisite of the test case. Once you change your VPN to a specific country, then you're going to sign up, which is your manual process, which is you're going to basically do it with your hand. And then you log in and it's fine. Then you have to go and change that to another country and do the same thing. So is it tedious? Is it time consuming? Yes, all three pretty much points right there. If you want a real test case, for example, nationwide insurance. So I work for national insurance, and anytime they make a business rule change, right? For example, let's say in New Jersey, we don't want to provide auto coverage, right? So for example, let's say in New Jersey, we don't have any licensed professionals, and we don't want to provide them with auto coverage, for example. So all of a sudden, no more New Jersey. Like everything else, all the other products should be working. For example, their umbrella coverage, their RV, their home, everything else is fine, just the auto, right? So think about the test cases that I have to test. In this case, I have to test all other product first in New Jersey to make sure that every other product is fine, except for auto. Then I have to go into every single state and do the same, because I want to make sure that that specific business rules also didn't take effect on other states, right? So that becomes 50 times 3. That's how many test cases that you will be doing the testing when there is a change takes place in one single state.
So that will be the regression, basically, to check all states. If it's
That is even not even a regression. That is just you testing the feature, because the changes that you just took place, that is the cause of the reason why. And then regression test will be even bigger suite.
got it.
Okay. All right. So let's talk about automation process, and then we will have 20-30 minutes to write some automation test cases, which is pretty exciting for you guys, because if you haven't seen how to automate. All right. So the next thing is automation process. So we learned the importance of automation and what to be automated, right? But then what is the process in a brand new team? What is the process of automation in a team? Because this will give you some idea how automation takes place and what is the flow. So number one is pretty much selecting a tool, right? So testing tool for automation, right? So you have to select a tool first. And the reason why I said select a tool is because there is many automation tool. And if there is many automation tool, how do you decide which tool to select? You have to work with your team. Your team, pretty much you have to see the needs of your team and the product, right? Your product, the product that you're dealing with, is it okay to do Selenium, or should we be using another tool like Cypress, right? So Cypress is JavaScript based, right? And it is an out-of-box tool, meaning once you configure, you don't have to do much configuration. It is already pre-configured. Or let's say UFT. UFT is another tool made by HP, and that is also a license tool, and they charge pretty big amount for each license and yearly basis. So is it something that is suitable? So if your team is like very brand new and you guys are just experimenting with automation, getting a license tool probably not a good idea. If you get a license tool, then also there is a good chance you'll be hiring somebody who is an expert onto that tool. So that way you can make most out of that tool. You're paying for it, so you have to make the most. But Selenium is a tool that is open source. By that means, you don't have to pay for it. It is flexible and it works with so many languages. So one of the biggest factor of selecting a tool is that what language the team can work with. So if your team in in your team, developers are working with Java, and QA maybe worked with C# for example, right? So this is not same. And so then you can still select Java because you will have developers to also help you at some point. So when you automate and everything, and let's say you got stuck somewhere, you can just ask a developer and say, hey, do you have 5 minutes? Let's talk about something. I'm pretty much stuck on something. I think you can help. And then they will gladly help you, right? So in order to get the whole team to collaborate, in order to get contribution from the entire team, you have to be able to select a tool that is suitable for the entire team. If the whole entire team, majority of the people are using Java, then you select Java with Selenium. If the team is more with Ruby, then you select with Ruby and Java, Selenium, right? So it really depends on the team and what is the need of the team. You cannot just say, I will select Selenium with Java because it is the this and that. It has to be custom tailored to that specific team. We don't just go ahead and select something by Googling and saying, okay, you know what, these tools seems to be nice, right? It has to be based on the team itself. Then you have to define what it is that you want to automate, right? Define scope, right? You cannot just try to automate everything. So scope, you can say we're going to start with smoke, right? We're going to make a smoke suite automation, and after that we will do regression, and after that we will then try to go into the system, which is pretty much automate as much as we can. So pretty much, in order for you to automate smoke suite, you have to have a definition what test cases qualifies to be in smoke suite. Now, who can tell me what is smoke testing?
Smoke testing is basically the first thing you quickly check, right?
Yeah, you're quickly
It's like
checking the health
landing
of the
page.
application, right?
Yeah.
That means you're going into the bigger part of the application, like critical features, just going in there, doing 1 or 2 tests to make sure that it is still functioning as it should. So now smoke testing is typically a small suite, because typically 15-20 minutes, you shouldn't take more than that. If you automate, you shouldn't be taking more than 20 minutes to finish. So smoke testing is really good if you doing environment testing. So for example, before you carry on with your regression, you run the smoke test 20 minutes, and 20 minutes later, you know that the application is healthy, and only then you move on to regression testing. Okay, so smoke testing has its own usage, right? We don't just create these test cases and then just leave it and not ever use, right? So if you run the smoke test and you find an issue, then that is a bigger issue, meaning you shouldn't even do the regression. Just make sure that issue is fixed before you go into the regression testing. So one way to check the health of the application is a smoke test, which deals with major part of the application and does pretty much test the major part of the application to make sure that it is at least highly critical functionalities are working. Then we go into regression and then system. So you will pretty much make the determination what will be considered a smoke test and what will be considered regression. When do you make the determination? After you write the test cases or after you write the test scenario, you will say, okay, this scenario seems to be going into smoke. So then you'll automate and you'll tag that as a smoke. And then anything that actually qualifies to be smoke can also qualify to be in regression. So you can, it can be both, right? But you don't want to duplicate. If you're going to execute one after another, then you don't want to duplicate, right? You don't want to have a duplicate on both. If it already in smoke, then leave it and then select something that is for regression, something else. All right. So number 3 is that planning and design. So design and development, right? Because you're writing code, right? So you have to do this planning. And how planning means, like, you can just simply write some code and say, yeah, it's going to work. You have to think about the maintainability, reusability. How can we reuse a part of the code that we've written already? And how can we maintain our test cases without having to do so much work, right? So you have to do this portion. And this is pretty much once and done, right? So once you plan and design and everything, the tool is ready to go. Then, this is like in the very beginning of the early stage of the automation even this early stage of the automation, what to be. Once you select the tool, you don't do that again and again. It's not a life cycle. Okay. Then you define your scope, then you do your planning, how the framework should be, what will it include, what libraries that you want to use, and so and so, right? Then we write our test cases and then we do the execution. So let's say write test script. Number 5, execute. And execute will take place every day. You can execute every day, anytime, right? Because it's automated. And then we talk about maintenance. Maintenance, just like your, just like a software, right? Because this is a software too. We're building a software that will test for us, right? And so that means we have to also maintain. We're going to see, as time goes by, we're going to see our test cases failing, and we need to be able to investigate first, find out it's not a bug, it's not a real bug, and then we update our test cases if it's our fault, right? If the test case fails because we need to update our test case, so then we do that. All right, so we'll definitely
didn't
go more
understand.
into that. Yeah, go ahead.
I didn't understand number 3. If you can just explain that one more time, the planning, design, and development.
Yeah. So planning is basically once the automation tool is selected, right? When you have your framework, how are you going to be writing the tests, right? It's not so imagine like there is no coding standard. For example, everybody's writing the code the way they want. Yeah. And that means there will be a lot of like pretty much there is no discipline within your code. That means you duplicating somebody else's code, they duplicating you, and there is a pretty much zigzag situation. You writing everything in the same page, that becomes unmaintainable code, right? Because you cannot reuse, therefore you have to write so much other codes. And when you cannot reuse, that means you have to copy paste up somebody else's code too, right? And that's when the planning comes and say, hey, we're going to use page object pattern. We're going to have this simple design phase, which is we have this folder where we're going to keep all the test data. We have this folder, we're going to keep all the test cases related to homepage. We're going to keep all the test cases that is related to sign up page in this folder, right? So these planning where you pretty much make a determination where things should go, and who makes this planning is basically somebody with a test architect knowledge, somebody who is going to make the framework. And that's the person who is going to give you a tour of the framework, because every framework is different.
That's basically the product owner's job, right?
That will be so think about this way. Product owner cannot automate, yeah, because otherwise they wouldn't be a product owner. They will be like highly technical person who knows everything. Product owner is there to pretty much take the requirement. They get the requirement from stakeholders or even end users, and then they translate that into their notes, and then they pass that notes to a business analyst. Business analyst takes that note and then translate that into business requirement that is easily readable by technical team, which is us. Okay. This is done by somebody like me who joins the team and promise the team that we're going to be automating, we're going to create the automation framework, and we're going to be automating everything that we can, right? So for example, I join a team, and before I joined, they already explained to me, look, this is a position where we don't have any automation. We want you to only focus on automation. So I join a team, I select a tool, and then I give them a demo. For example, say, hey, this tool is really good because, you know, our team currently using Java and Selenium, and Selenium is very much flexible. We don't want to use something like UFT. We don't want to use something like Cypress or something. And the team said, okay, yeah, that sounds great. Let's go for it. The next thing I will be doing is like defining what should be automated first, because I cannot just start automating test cases without having to have proper reason. So if I can automate first Smoke Suite, I can already use that. The team can already use that Smoke Suite to determine if the application is healthy. So if I can do something that will be used immediately, which is better, right? Then I will say, okay, I'm going to then build the regression suite. And so I will have my roadmap where I will say, okay, the next 2 months I will be doing this. The next 2 months I'll be doing that. After that, So this is pretty much just a document to say, okay, I will do this and this and this, all of that different type of test cases. Number 3 is planning, right? So before even like going into writing test cases, I have to design the automation framework, and I would have to plan and say, okay, if somebody gets hired and they want to contribute to this framework, what they have to follow, right? They have to follow my coding standard. So here is a coding standard that I'm writing. If I'm writing a test case, how can I make this highly reusable, right? So then I would follow the page object pattern. Then I will say, okay, if I want to do have test data, I have to connect to the database now. So that is another design, right? So all of that aspect, a test QA architect, it's their job to think about all of these. Once that is done, if you join as a QA engineer, all of these are done for you. You have to then work with the QA architect closely and say, what are you expecting? What kind of coding standard that you are looking to do? You cannot simply just write some code and expect they're going to like it. They have their own standard. They write a guidelines, and you have to follow that guidelines to write your test automation. Okay, so I hope that explained a little bit. Now let's go into. So we talked a lot about automation. So let's go into do something, right? Because that way it's a bit more exciting. I know that some of you guys are probably already are tired. So let's see something exciting. So if you want to take a
Excuse me,
minute.
Bhaiya, can you tell again the maintenance?
Sure. So maintenance, right? So you wrote your test script, you execute it, and you keep finding bugs. And then maintenance kicks in when let's say your developers made changes to the application. Your test was written based on the application. Application has changed. What do you have to do next? Right? If application changes every 2 weeks, therefore you have to update your test cases based on those changes. Right? So that is part of the maintenance. That is one part of the maintenance. The other part is that when you write the test cases, it passes for the first day, second day, third day. 1 week later, it no longer passes. It fails. It's because your test case is pretty much need a little bit of work, a little bit more work, because maybe you didn't think about the date, that you may be using static date. Maybe you didn't think about the slow environment. Your page is loading now. Before it would take 5 milliseconds to load. Now it's taking 10 milliseconds, right? For example, now you have to update your test. That is also part of the maintenance. And sometimes the feature changes dramatically, like the developer, they change the face of the application. Something dramatically changed, you have to change all of your test cases to reflect that. And that is going to be also maintenance. Okay, so all right, so let's go into something more exciting, because don't want to do too much boring stuff. Yes, we're talking about book definitions. We're talking about
We'll understand this when the examples are given, right?
yeah, I mean, you will just right now get the idea, right? This is just to prepare you for what's coming, right? We're going to start automating very soon, right? So today what I will do, I'll give you guys a light version of automation, and your homework will be writing some test cases with automation. So let's talk about that. Okay, before I go into that, let me explain in terms of Selenium, what do we have, right? What kind of tools we will be using. Okay, and then we'll go right into the tool. I think 20 minutes is enough for me to write one test case, but that means I have 10 more minutes here to explain something. So let's just do it as quick as I can. Okay, so Selenium, right? We have Selenium Suite. The reason why we call SUIT Suite, right? Selenium Suite. If I didn't spell it correctly, correct me. Don't just correct me if I'm wrong. But Selenium Suite meaning is like it's more than just one thing. It has different components of Seleniums. And today the one that we're going to be interacting with is it's pretty much called Selenium IDE. 1 second. Okay, that's good. Okay. So the first thing is number one, right? Number one is Selenium. And I'm going to okay, so you guys, these are easily accessible, like what Selenium IDE is and everything on the internet. You can find more explanation, but I will give you my definition. Like I will just tell you guys what I understand over the years and what it is this tool does, right? So that way you understand the easy version, and then later you can do as a homework, you can go and find out what is the definition, what is the actual the way that they express their side of the meaning of these tools, or at least what the tool does. So first thing, Selenium IDE is a tool. It's a Firefox plugin, right? So let me just make this smaller.
So Selenium is a tools, right? Bhai?
Selenium suite is basically a sets of tools, right? It's not just one tool. And right now we're talking about one of the set, which is Selenium IDE, and then we're gonna go over more of the Selenium tools, right? So if you guys can't see anything, just let me know. I just made it smaller so we can fit everything here. So what does Selenium suite does, right? Sorry, Selenium IDE does. Selenium IDE is first of all Firefox. Firefox plugin. You guys ever download Firefox plugin? Then you'll know what I'm talking about. So it's a Firefox plugin, right? And it can record, which is the major record and run, right? So that means it's a tool that simply records your action. You do something on a website, it will record it. And later you can actually run and repeat the same thing. The machine will do it for you, the repeat after the record, right? And that's why Selenium IDE is super easy to use, right? I said Firefox, but recently they also have Chrome. So I don't know, I didn't actually test it in Chrome because it's very recent change. I don't know how well it works. So we're gonna still do it with Firefox, okay, for today's. And so Selenium IDE is for somebody with it. Coding is not necessary, right? Coding knowledge is not necessary. That's one thing. You don't have to write code, but you have to have general idea what this tool does. So let's not go any more explanation here, but record and run is basically you go into a website and you click and you select iPhone. And once you select iPhone and you, let's say you go into Apple, right? Your Selenium IDE will record that in coding, okay? It will write the code for you. And then it will save the code. So later you can run it.
Basically, it will record your activity as you do browse through manually.
Right. Now but also aside from just record and running, why Selenium IDE is pretty much good tool is because it also allows you to verify something. So verify, we call it assertion. So assertion, it also helps you with assertion. Right. So let me just put it into. So why do we think we need assertion, right? So when you say a test case, so simply record and run will not make a test case, right? Because we need to be able to verify something, right? If you don't verify something, that is not a test case. How many people agree and disagree? Anybody disagree here? Nobody disagrees. Okay, that's good. That's good, because if you write a test case and the test case doesn't do anything, it just simply goes here and there and doesn't verify something, you don't have an expectation, for example, you don't have what is the expected result, then it's not a test case, right? So the reason why Selenium IDE is a testing tool is because it has assertion. It helps you to write the script automatically, and it is a Firefox and Chrome plugin, right? Now, it's right now it's probably sound really good to you, right? Like, oh wow, I don't have to do no coding, I can write my test cases and not have to worry about anything. But this tool has its limitation, and that's why we are going to be focusing more on to the other tool. Selenium IDE is good for a very small project, okay? Selenium IDE is good for a project that is well defined, meaning the application, when the developer are creating the application, they know that it will be tested by Selenium IDE. Therefore, like for example, this buy, right? The buy should have a specific attribute. For example, here, let's see buy. See, it doesn't have, so it has area level, it has class, right? So in this case, in Apple, if you try to automate using Selenium IDE, you will have to customize it. You cannot simply just do it record and run. You have to do the extra work, right? Extra work, pretty much customizing your selectors. So if you do customize that, then it doesn't really help you, right? If you have to do customization, then it's better off you write the code yourself, right? And that's why we have another tool, right? So this is the disadvantage of that, and we'll talk about pros and cons. But number 2 is called Selenium RC. Now, Selenium RC will give you the freedom of writing the script on your own. So you write the script. Therefore, you can follow any best practices that object-oriented programming allows you to follow. And then you have absolute freedom on pretty much, and freedom and flexibility on making this framework as good as you should, as good as you can make. And then lastly, Selenium RC is running through a RC server, right? So the disadvantage I'll give you guys, but this is pretty much more, it's flexible, right? Number 3 is something that we're going to focus more, right? So this is something that we're going to spend a lot of time with, which is called Selenium WebDriver, right? Selenium WebDriver is a tool that directly communicates. So in this case, Selenium RC communicates through a server, right? So Selenium RC pretty much needs a RC server. So needs a RC server, and then pretty much there is a middleman to communicate with the browser. So when it comes about automation, right? Selenium WebDriver is it's something that tells the web browser, any web browser, to what to do. Selenium RC, which is the prior version of Selenium WebDriver, it first tells the RC servers then translate, and then it talks to the browser. So there is a middleman, which is RC server, and therefore it takes a little bit of time, right?
What is
So
RC server? RC, what does that mean?
Selenium RC right here. Hold on. Let's see. They are Selenium RC server. It's the mediator, right, between Selenium. I don't know if they explain actually. So core, Selenium core JavaScript program, blah blah. It doesn't really. It's Selenium RC is basically a tool, and they gave the name RC. I don't know why they gave the name RC, but it needs its own server to be configured, right, in order to communicate with the browser, right? So it doesn't directly do it. RC has, I know for sure that Selenium RC. Why do they name the naming convention here? RC means, right? So Selenium important test suite framework, blah blah. It doesn't really explain anywhere actually what RC means, but that's what they named the team who built this Selenium, right? So Selenium initially was originated with JavaScript, right? Somebody wrote some JavaScript and it was automatically doing the testing, and then he realized, wait a minute, this can be used by everybody, right? So that's when he basically decided to put it out there and make it compatible with other languages as well. So just know that RC is the name of the tool, right? Selenium RC, which is the first version of Selenium WebDriver, and it needs a server to communicate. It doesn't communicate directly to the browser. Now, Selenium WebDriver does the same thing. You can write your script on your own. It is flexible, but it communicates directly with the browser. So browser will definitely listen to everything that you're saying. Number 4 is Selenium Grid. Selenium Grid is, okay, let me just expand this a little bit. Okay. Selenium Grid is like a companion, right? It's a companion for RC, it's a companion for WebDriver. What it does is that it takes your test and it divides your tests into an equal number. So if you have 100 tests, then it will divide it into equal number, and you can then choose to run this test parallel. It allows you to run tests parallel, right? So it allows for us to do parallel execution. Now, why do we need parallel execution is because if you have 3,000 test cases and it takes 4 days, and you run them at the same time, in that 4 days, something will happen. Server might go down, not any computer, they can't just run 4 days straight without having any sort of interruption. So then the problem is, wait a minute, so we can never run the whole thing at once. We need some way to run them on multiple machines to make it fast. What Selenium Grid does, you can configure a hub, right, which is like, let's say okay, let me just Selenium, let me just find a image to represent what I'm talking about so it's easier to visualize. Image, there we go. Okay, so there is so many images, but anyways, so I'll probably choose this. So you pretty much have a hub, right, where you configure your grid, and then that hub will then distribute your test in an equal number of the machines. So you can have these are called nodes. You can have 20 nodes, and you can tell them to run those tests and at the same time. So 20 different machines running the tests at the same time in parallel. Now, sometime Selenium grids, or I guess I would say Selenium grid also usable if you want to do multi-platform testing or cross-browser testing, meaning you want to do in one of the machine you want to do Safari, one of the machine you want to do Firefox, one of the machine you want to do Windows, one of the machine you want to do Android. So that way all of them finish at the same time and report back, instead of you doing one at a time, sequential manner.
Basically, like Java merge is doing the job for Java virtual machine in the test situations. Is that correct? If I'm understanding.
Not exactly, right? Because it's okay, so let me just go into here, right? So Selenium grid is, again, it's a piece of code, right? It's configurable piece of code that allows you to say what test cases run it and where. So you have to obviously configure node 1, node 2, and node 3 and node 4 somewhere in the cloud, or you can have real machines in your workspace. And then you tell hub, I want to run this first 100 test cases into node 1. I want to run the next 100 test cases in node 2, and so and so. But in this case, this image that I'm showing you guys, it is a representation of running the test for cross-browser situation, right?
Okay, I get that. Yeah, that makes sense.
So you're saying like, okay, I have 3,000 test cases. I want to run the 3,000 test cases on Firefox first. So Firefox and IE and Safari and Android. So they're running all parallel, okay? So that means if the 3,000 test cases takes 5 hours, for example, then 5 hours later, you finish testing on all of the machines. Now, if you do one at a time without the hub, without the Selenium grid, then it's going to take 5 times 4, 20 hours. Okay, because you have to do one at a time. And that's what Selenium grid is. So Selenium grid is usable by Selenium WebDriver and Selenium RC, but not Selenium IDE. Selenium IDE is different. So, all right, so you guys got a little bit of idea. Now, Selenium IDE, if you just join a new company and they have zero idea about automation, you can say, let's go slow. Let's start with Selenium IDE and see how much we can use, right? Quickly, you'll learn Selenium IDE is not that much of a useful situation because you constantly have to modify your script after recording because it doesn't work. Like the modern technology, the modern web development is pretty much disallowing for you to use Selenium IDE. Okay, and I'll tell you why. The reason is that if you go into, let's say, Facebook, for example, right? And then let's see how hard that is to automate. And not there. Let me go into incognito so I don't log in. Okay, so Facebook, let's see how hard this feature to be automate, right? So if I go to inspect and from Chrome, right, and I will go into my email. So in order to automate, you need to have ID or name, you need to have a class and so on. So this is fairly simple. Selenium IDE will be able to automate that without any problem because it has an ID, right? Then you have your, as you can see, there's another ID for this element. So Selenium IDE will be able to automate that without any problem. But when you go inside of it, there is a lot more technologies that Selenium IDE will not be able to do. So sooner or later, after the 3 or 4 test cases, you'll realize, damn, I should be using Selenium WebDriver, so that way I don't end up doing so much work. But let's not put Selenium IDE and dismiss the idea that we can still use Selenium IDE for a smaller project. Let's go ahead and start using Selenium IDE, and therefore it will give us some idea at what point we cannot use Selenium IDE. But in terms of us giving you training on automation, we're going to be focusing on the WebDriver for the longest, right? We want to teach you anything and everything about WebDriver. We're going to touch grid a little bit, but we're going to touch WebDriver a lot more. IDE is for today because this is your introduction, so it's a good opportunity to kind of know about Selenium IDE and what it does, and also learn a little bit about automation. This will definitely teach how automation works. All right, so Selenium IDE, you go to Firefox first of all. And Firefox, just look for the plugin, Firefox plugin Selenium, right? IDE. When you do that, the first thing you see add-ons.mozilla, that means you're in the right place. As you can see, 4.3 rating. You click on that. Once you do that, you click on install. For me, it was already installed from the last session when I was teaching. So I have that right here. Okay, so this is where it should show. If it doesn't show, you have to pretty much go into your setting and then make sure you show that in your panel right here. You know what, let me remove it. So it's a good way to kind of go over it again, right? So I just removed it, and we're gonna do it one more time. So add to the Firefox, and you see add, and I just click on add, and boom, okay, and it just added right here directly. So it should add it. If you don't see it here, that means you have to do something. Just Google it, how to add a Firefox add-on to the header pane or something. I don't know if it's the header pane, but this is where you want to add your Selenium IDE, so that way it's easily accessible, right? So now we want to do some testing now. So I will click on that. Once I click on it, it's automatically giving me a window where I can select few things. The first thing is that I know that this is 3.17, which is the latest and probably the greatest. And what would you like to do first, right? The first thing for us is the question, and this is something that you'll probably get every time. And it says record a new test in a new project. That's one. Open an existing project, create a new project, to close Selenium IDE. We don't want to do that. We want to today, for today's sake and learning, we want to do record a new test case in new project. So that's something that we'll do. I got to do a project name. So today's Saturday, I'm going to say SAT and 10th, right? So it's SAT 10 21, right? So that is for today, and I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And the next thing I will do is says give me your base URL. How many people know what base URL means? Base URL is basically when you test your application and the application has an URL, right? That is a base URL, because all you're going to be doing, that's the only URL you'll be testing, right? Because you're not going to go into different application, right? If you're testing one application, then it should have one URL. So you want to give that base URL. It will not change. If you want to change base URL, then the test case is not going to work. You can't change it twice. So let's see what we want to automate. So I want to find something easy. Okay. Let's see Google, maybe Google, all right? So we want to automate Google, right? So I'm gonna give Google as a base URL, right? And I'm going to put this to the side and I'm going to say start recording. See right here. When I click on start recording, it opened up Google. Just for the sake of making it easier for you guys to see, I'm going to make it bigger. And as you can see that it's constantly showing the Selenium IDE is recording. So anything that I will do here, it will be recorded. So let's not basically zigzag, click, click, click. Instead of doing that, what you need to do, you need to be careful where you click, what you do. Okay, so that way Selenium IDE can record only the steps that is necessary. So if we are testing, let's say the search criteria, and we're talking about laptops. So LAPTOPS, and I will click enter from there. Okay, right off the bat, you can see there's something being recorded already. Okay, there are commands and target and values being recorded. Okay, so we'll see about that. In this case, I want to create an assertion here, meaning what can I say? What is my expectation after searching with laptops? I'm going to right click and I'm going to click on Selenium IDE. Okay, now I have a lot of tools available to me. When you see that Selenium IDE, you click on it, now it says assert. There is assert and there is verify and there is wait for. Okay, so we'll talk about all three situations. The first thing, assertion. Assertion is says I want to look for a text. So you see not present, not checked. So many things, not text. Okay, so I want to do let's say text validation, right? And now it added already, right? So we're gonna do that later. So assert text, when we're talking about this specific text to be asserted into this specific location. So I don't know if the test will pass because it may change. So that is how we create assertion, right? Okay, so that is one that we are looking into. So let me just go ahead and click on stop recording, because I'm going to stop recording, and then I'm going to give this as a test case name, which is Google search, and click OK. Right now, let's look at it. We don't need this anymore. Let's look at it, how the test case is and how it looks like. And right now you have the opportunity to refine it, right? So first we open, second we maximize the window size. When I did that, you guys saw it, right? Then we click on queue, name queue. If you go to Google and you look for, if you inspect this, you'll see the name is queue, right? So this is where we clicked and it recorded the name. Okay, so that's how it knows. It needs to know a target, right? The target is the name queue. That means it will click here. Okay, that's the idea. Then it typed in queue. Did we type laptops in queues? Yes, we did. And you can see the value of the laptop, and this is the command type. Okay, then the last thing is that we, even after typing, we even click enter from here. Okay, so therefore send keys allows you to put the key underscore enter. So we did the enter right there into the same field. Once we went to the next page, what we did, we said we want to assert something. We want to assert some text, and that's what we did. And so now in this case, I don't want to assert everything. What I want to assert is that instead of taking the whole value, I want to only assert for laptops only, right? So I'm just modifying the test a little bit, and then assert the text of laptop. So I don't know if this will work, because the whole text is one single string, correct? So if it's checking for string, it will not work. But if it does work, that means it is checking within string, which is good. All right, so let's go ahead and run it, see how this works, right? So if you want to run, you have two options. You have run all. So if you have 20 test cases, you can run everything at the same time. You have run current test. So if I'm going to click on run current test, and let's see what it does. So it's preparing your test to run. So let's go ahead and give it a time. Okay, waiting. It usually doesn't take that long. Maybe it's the first time. Usually it takes. Okay, so So something is, okay, set window size is it did it, and then click Q, it didn't do, right? So click Q, it didn't do. So open up the, so something we messed up here that we needed to probably, so okay, let's see. Let me just run one more time and see. Okay, there you go. Okay. So the first time it just didn't really work for some reason. It's mysterious. I cannot tell you why, honestly. But we have it assertion failure. And just as I suspected, the assertion failure. So we're gonna fix this right now. And as you can see, all of the other steps it went through. So let me just go ahead and show you one more time, right? And then we go from there. Laptop, and it's doing it automatically, guys. I'm not doing anything in here, and then it will fail the assertion. So IDRCNT was looking for laptop. That's where it failed, right? So what we're gonna do is that we're going to look for this specific thing. So I'm gonna go ahead and make that change. And in this case, okay, these IDs are crazy, okay.
This is basically a white box testing, right? Basically where you are right now.
No, this is not white box. We're not looking at the code. This is just HTML of the page that I'm trying to, I'm just trying to see what can we assert. We need to be able to have assertion, right? Because I'm trying to say, okay, you know what, if you see laptop, then it passes. But then what's happening is that with the laptop, it looking for the entire string. So first of all, let me look into this area, right? RC, so, okay, I don't want to delete it. RC, so it's RCNT. So where is RCNT? I'm gonna look for that. Command find RC, okay, RCNT right there. So where is RCNT? Let's see. Oh, okay. So the whole thing is RCNT. So that's where the problem is, right? So we cannot just assert the whole thing, right? Because it's so many text in Google. When you search the first time, it may display this many product. The next time it may show some other products. So the text will change, right? So therefore we shouldn't do it this way. So we're gonna do another recording, and we're gonna show you how to put an assertion that will be at least working. So this is a failing test, good example, which is great. We're gonna write and one more test, okay? So we're gonna do a record. Selenium is recording. Okay, never mind. 1 second. I gotta get out of this. Stop that first. Stop recording. Okay, this is done. Okay. Test, and then, okay, I gotta create a new one. Click plus, test case name. I'm gonna say Google search 2, add. Okay, so this is empty, which is good. That's what we need. Click enter. Went to Google. Okay, we're gonna search for, this time we're gonna search for iPhone. And it came here, and what I want to do this time, assertion, I want to look to see if it shows Apple, right? So right click, Selenium. So you have to select, you have to basically select the text. So for example, this text I want to assert. If it shows, that means Apple was the first one to display. Okay, so I'm gonna right click, I'm gonna do, you see, I'm gonna do Selenium, and I'm gonna do assertion, and I want the text, right? So I can do text, I can do values, I can do present. Present would be a better idea, but I will do text just for this specific test case, and then we will explore another option. So notice is it copied all the text that we want to assert. So if I run this test case right now, and let me get rid of this, and it passes. Okay, so Google 2 completed successfully. So we have assertion. So how many people actually agree with me that this is a proper test case? If you agree with me, you gotta tell me why. So everybody disagrees with me?
Because it shows that it's completely successful. So
No,
why
but
it's not
obviously
right?
anything will show completely successful. I can just I can just go to Google and do nothing, and then it still show me, I can run it, it'll be green. But what is special about this test case that makes it as a complete test test case?
You put an assertion to.
Exactly, assertion.
Yeah, it's an
Criteria.
assertion.
Yeah. So when you say test, right? Like in general, like test, like you're in your classroom in college or whatever, and if they don't really check you for something, for example, they're giving you, if you're doing math and they're not giving you any math things, right? Let's say formula, they're giving you math problems, and they're not measuring you on that, that means it's not a test, right? So same thing, we have to, your teacher has to expect something from you. The teacher will say, okay, you know what, I expect my students to pass these many math, at least out of 10 of the math problems, they should be at least finish 7 successfully, right? And that is his expectation. Here, our expectation as a QA engineer is that, okay, and then this is the decision that we made right now, right? Is that this specific target should have this text. If I search for iPhone, right? You can actually assert for anything else. So let's do another one, a few more, and then we'll end the day, right? So let's create a new test case, and we're gonna say Google search 3, right? Empty, that's fine. We're gonna do a record, and it opens up automatically because we have the base URL. Here, we will click on store. Once we are on store, me as a QA engineer, right? My expectation is that if I see this text, that means my test passes. I was able to click on store and show, basically be on store. Is that something that everybody's agreeing? We can also assert for something else. Like, what is something in this page that you can immediately look and say, okay, I'm in the right page?
And for assert, this is another terminology for saying verifying your text cases.
Exactly. But verify has a different meaning in Selenium, and assert has a different meaning. Assert is basically you creating a checkpoint. You're saying, if I don't see this, then fail, done, immediately fail, stop my test. Verify is that if I don't see it, okay, let me know later, but still continue running my test. Okay. So verify and assert, two different things in Selenium, but in real life, you're right. In any other context, in a real world, it's verifying and assertion is kind of same, but here there is a 2 different meaning because the way Selenium works. Okay. Now let's say, okay, we're making a collective decision here and saying, okay, if we see this text, then we're good to go. So I'm going to highlight this text. I'm going to right click. I'm going to then go to Selenium IDE. I'm going to do assert, and I'm going to say, I need to see this text. Okay. I can also say present. It should be on the page. Okay.
What's the difference between text and present? If you click the 2.
Okay. So okay, this time I'm going to do present, right? And boom. So you'll see how present works. And I'm going to go ahead and end the test. And that was our test case. So once we validate something, it's done, right? So when you see like the number 5, assert element is present, right? It didn't really care about the value. It didn't really put the value in here. We can actually put the value and say, okay, we want to, this is the value actually, right? This is the actual value, but this is the target. It's just, what we are saying is that, okay, as long as the target is there, we're good to go. You understand? So this is not going to be a very good test, because if you do a target testing, so this target is, it could be same also into another page of Google, right? There is a possibility that this could be same, but if we run it, it will pass because it will go ahead and see that specific, right? Oh, it didn't click on this container. So this may be another issue because I don't know. Okay. After the store, we don't really need the step 4, right? Because we are just directly asserting this. I don't even remember clicking number 4. So in this case, I will remove this one. Okay. So when you write your test, just like this, right? You can remove a step that is unnecessary. So that was an unnecessary step that we had. I will go ahead and now run my test.
So those 1, 2, 3, 4 things that we've seen there, those are test cases, right? Our test case from after we ran the test.
Yep.
With Selenium.
Yep. So now what is happening here, right? As you can see that the test is failing is because why? And I can tell you immediately the reasons, but for you to find out why this is failing is going to take a little bit of time. So to save that time, let me tell you exactly what happened here. When you run this, and you can probably see it, how quick that is, right? It's pretty quick. And the page after clicking on the store is taking some time to load. But then Selenium here is impatient. It didn't give any time to wait. So we need to add another step to say wait for. We need to add another step to wait for this element in order to pretty much make our test pass. So let me see if I can go ahead and do that. So wait for the element presence, right? And boom, and we're saying, okay, wait for element presence, and we're saying that wait 30,000 millisecond, right? That means 30 seconds, okay? Then we can do the assertion. Then we can do the assertion after that. So assert, and we want to do present, right? Okay. Element to be present, and then we have to add this specific element. So I'm going to copy this, Command C, and go back here, and I want this. Okay, so now our test will pass. First, we're waiting for the element, and then only then we're asserting. Okay. So these should pass at this time, because before, when you click on, oh, okay, let's see, it's still failing. Okay, so I'm going to change the way the element is. So it fails because, again, like the way the CSS selector is. So I'm going to change the selector a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to find the CSS selector for the sign up. As long as it's there, then I will. So right click. Okay, this is a button. Right click, copy, and you'll see CSS path or CSS selector. So I'm going to copy that. Okay. Once I copy that, I will click here and I will replace my CSS selector, Control V, and done. And then I will then still change and done. Okay. And in this case, okay, let me just real quick. So it has to be CSS equal this, right? So okay, that's good. Okay, so I have to put CSS equal in the on the front, and I'm doing this on my own. Pretty much changing the test after the, one second, you guys. Okay, we're gonna be done very soon, almost. So that what we needed to do, and same thing here. CSS is equal to this, and done. And now let's go ahead and run it. Goodness, okay. And this is one of the reasons why Selenium IDE is pretty difficult, right? Is because now I have to re-record because it somehow doesn't like the, okay, doesn't like the thing that I have here. All right, let me go into Google. All right, we're pretty much almost nearly done with today's session, right? Getting a few calls, but one second. Let me go ahead and I'll go ahead and quickly pick this up, and maybe all right, sorry about that. I just had a call. All right. So with Selenium IDE, I'm not gonna spend too much time because we're nearly finishing the day. But anytime you see something like this, re-record, right? And make sure you put your assertion. So once you play with it for some time, you're going to be able to record a script that will be executing well. So in this case, we have one test case that is not passing, but I'm going to show you guys how to run all of the test cases. So run all of it, and it'll basically open up for each test case. It'll open up a different browser of the same browser type, which is your Firefox. With that said, you guys, today I will go ahead and end the class here. Any questions?
Yeah, last week did we have a class? Because the Selenium thing is new to me. I thought July 4th we didn't have class, didn't we?
Yeah, we didn't have any class today. This is an introductory, right? This is pretty much the basics of Selenium. The next class you're gonna see a little bit more advanced. So just be prepared for that. I know many of you guys, right? Many of you guys even with Jira, you guys didn't pay too much attention, right? And I'll tell you from experience, if everybody's here is an adult, right? You guys are here for a job, not to pretty much, be here either for any other reason. Everybody's here for a job, right? So put that much of an effort because you're looking for a job in engineering field. And if you are not doing what you need to do, then you're not acquiring that knowledge. You're not getting that knowledge, right? So sooner or later you will fall short, and sooner or later you will feel like, this is too much. This is way too much, right? And again, if this was easy, then everybody would do it, right? Why would people work in McDonald's? Why would people work in Dunkin'? Why would people work and do taxi, right? It's because not everybody can do it. And so you need to be able to determine if you have what it takes. If you don't have 2 hours a day and you're not able to, because initially when I give you guys Jira, nobody, I would say very few, maybe one or two, only 1 or 2 person actually signed up. And I checked like daily basis just to see how many people sign up. And I'm not trying to be like, here trying to like kind of creepy here, but it's just that I just wanted to see what is the motivation level, like what drives you pretty much, right? Because without the motivation, I cannot help you because you're not helping yourself, right? So find your motivation. It's no matter where you go. It could be here with Chantabai and myself, or it could be anywhere else, right? No matter where you go, if you don't have the motivation, I can guarantee and write it down, nobody can help you, right? So it is pretty critical. It is very critical that you find your inner motivation. Why are you doing this in the first place? Ask yourself. And then what are you trying to accomplish? What is the end goal? The end goal is to get a job. So yes, when you get a job, are you going to be okay, doing this engineering work and be able to get up to speed right away, or within the first 2 weeks or 3 weeks? What will it take for you to be there and be able to work? It's not just like you get a job and now you're automatically getting paychecks and you're pretty much out there doing nothing and getting paid. You have to do some work to be able to get paid. On your 3rd week, you'll probably lose your job if you don't know your stuff. So my recommendation, like I said, I'm not trying to pretty much be too much enforcing. We try to be as fun as we can be, but remember, if you don't have a motivation, nobody can help you. You could go anywhere you want to, and if you don't have what it takes for you to kind of say, okay, you know what, I'm going to spend 2 hours per day, and you don't have a schedule, you don't have a set schedule, you don't have planning, then you are not going to be able to be successful in this thing. So my recommendation is, like I said, Jira was probably something compared to this. Jira is a baby's thing compared to Selenium, what we are about to hit, right? And by the way, tomorrow's class, I will probably ask Shantabai to continue with the Selenium IDE. But tonight, I want you to write at least as a bare minimum 2 test cases, right? It's simply you record and you run. That's it. Simple. And then when you do that, what I want you to do on the group channel that you are in, just simply record your screen and send it over. And do not send us a recording of your phone. Don't record with the phone. You're a QA engineer. You figure out how to record your screen and then send us to the group. Don't record with the phone. It's not very professional.
For doing this homework, we have to use Firefox browser. Is that right?
Firefox, I would recommend because Chrome is a very new thing, right? They didn't support Chrome until recently, so I didn't really touch on the Chrome, and so not sure how well it works in Chrome. But if you do it in Chrome and find out, then you can definitely also record it. Doesn't matter where you do it. I would say Firefox is something that we just touched today, so it's better you do it in Firefox.
So the
So
homework
there,
is just to run it. Record it and then
Record
see
it, make sure you have an assertion, and make
testing.
sure you have the steps. That's what I care about, the assertion more, right? So if you can put an assertion and you're opening your web page and assertion, then you good. Like, don't choose Google's already done, right? We already did Google as a team, right? So choose something else, and any website that you find it easy, and just do it.
I see. And in the future later on, will we ever have like a on-site class, anything like that? Sometimes
On site, you see, like we need to. We still have the office. The thing is that about on site, we still need to see how many people are willing to show up. We'll make that decision when when we see that more people are willing to come out, and
that would be nice because some of us are vaccinated and that way if you guys are at the office at least Monday through Friday, if you guys are open for let's just say one day, we
Mhm.
can just come there for one-on-one help. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Compared to
for sure. We used to do, I mean, because of pandemic, we're doing it online, but I also prefer on site because it's easier to kind of deal with face to face, and easier to kind of express, and even teaching is even becomes easier. So
hands-on is much better, I feel, in on
yeah.
person.
Yeah, so definitely, I mean, we're still thinking about it. We still have our office in Hillside. We just we'll probably ask you guys how many people would like to show up at some point, and then we're gonna start.
All right, Joel bhai, I have
yeah,
something to.
Go ahead.
All right, Joel bhai, I want to talk about something else. So if you have time after the class, can we talk?
Go ahead.
You
But
want
the
to talk right now?
virtual class going to be on, right? Because I'm from Florida, so
So even if it's like on site, we're going to do the same way, right? We're going to like put it on Zoom too, right?
okay, yeah.
Yes, but you'll probably hear a little bit more interaction, which is if he's on site, a lot of the people have questions, right? So every lessons there will be questions. So we're gonna try to minimize as much as we can, and maybe we'll do questions at the end. But interactive class is very good. I like when people ask questions. That means they're paying attention.
I think at this point, most of the people are vaccinated, so you can take you can take a vote from everyone so that you know how many people wants to join your interactive class.
Yeah, we'll probably do the voting, try to see, like, we need to have a minimum amount of, like, we can't do it with 2, 3, or 4, so we're gonna have to start with a good number. Even 10 is a good number, to be honest, to do on site. So we'll definitely keep that in mind. We'll let you guys know. I need to talk to
my suggestion. I just want to make a recommendation. I mean, like, I was thinking the class being online and recorded is good. That way, those of us who have a different work schedule, we can rewind and look back at the classes and stuff, right? But my main concern was if you guys can have one business day open for us to come in person at a certain time to get like one-on-one help, so that way we don't have to have full class during this pandemic, etc., in person. But at least we can get some like a help resource during for homework or something we don't understand, like an in-person once a week or something like that. And the rest of the class is fine online, like on Saturday, Sunday. Do you get what I mean? Instead of having full on board.
Yeah, so yeah, I guess that's how we have to go about it. We have to start slow, maybe one day, and then from there, if we see majority of the people are coming in, then we'll probably do 2 days. And yeah, so it's going to be incremental process. We're not gonna all of a sudden go on site, but we're gonna definitely do on site slowly.
All right, thank you.
All right, so that solves
I have one
problem,
question.
right? Any other questions?
Yes, I do. It's just out of my concern. If anyone work on let's say Android project or iOS project, right? So can I test the project on Selenium as well?
So with Selenium, you are, so if it's a web, right? So Selenium is pretty much good for web application, right? Even if it's Android, if you know how native and web app works, right? So on your phone, if you have an app and you click on it, then it's a native app, right? But if you have a on your Android phone and you click on it, it opens up your browser and it goes and you log in and you do things. That is called a hybrid application. So you can actually do with Selenium hybrid application testing, because it's like it's essentially a web page within the within a Android app, right? But you cannot test the actual native application with Selenium. So that is one of the disadvantage of Selenium, because you cannot test Windows application, client server application, or a iPhone app, because it only deals with browser, right? So that's one. Now for mobile testing, we have another tool called Appium. Appium is pretty much allow you to test any sort of application, native, hybrid, or even just web app, mobile web app. So that is something that we can look into, but we're not becoming mobile test engineer, right? So we're probably going to just touch on it. We're not going to go in depth, because our target job will be web application with Selenium WebDriver. So each of you guys, after the class is finished, will have expertise on Selenium WebDriver with Java. So therefore, our job situation will be the same. Like we're going to be looking for Selenium with Java type of job. But if you happen to get Android or iOS or mobile testing and somehow you got the job, we're going to give you 2 weeks additional training before your join date. So at least you'll be fine when you join.
Last week there was no class.
I have a question. Bhaiya, can you take a recap in Jira in next class? Because I don't understand the subtask, like in story or task.
Sure. Yes. So in next class, I'll spend maybe 10-15 minutes showing you guys how to do.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But if that is the only problem, then we'll show you. Okay, cool.
All right, Julbhai, I want to talk about the resume preparation. So, you know, I really don't know that it's a good time to talk about it, or you want me to talk to you later?
So are you ready for the mark? Have you done classes elsewhere or anything like that, or I don't know your situation?
This is Hassan. I think you remember me. So,
okay.
You know that.
Okay, so I guess, like, for the sake of time, we should talk some other time. Just give me a quick text, and just give me a quick text. I'll give you a call back.
All right. The thing is, that I just want to say that I am thinking that I will be prepared by next 2 weeks.
Okay.
Because I just need to review some of the stuff.
All right, so sounds good. You guys still see my screen, right? I mean, I'm gonna show you something.
Yeah.
Okay, let me just stop recording first. I'm gonna show you guys something. So this is just for motivation. Okay, so nothing to. Okay, stop recording this. Okay.